Joining me on my podcast today is a man who lives and breathes basketball, dedicating his life's work to the game in several different guises. His career as a leading executive in sport began with the creation of his own law practice in Greensboro, North Carolina, where he represented athletes in the region. From there, he joined the ranks at leading sports management firm Falk before taking on a role in the Nike Pro basketball division. Along the way, he built a close friendship with the one and only Michael Jordan, and whilst at Nike, was able to learn firsthand from the great Phil Knight, more of which we'll get into later. After a brief stint with the Washington Wizards, he led the business and legal affairs team of Nike's Jordan brand, moving into a leadership role with the NBA's Charlotte Hornets. He remained there for 17 years, credited with transforming the franchise into a commercial powerhouse and using his platform to serve the local community. He recently stepped away from that role, freeing up some of his precious time to join us today. So it's my absolute privilege to welcome the great Fred Whitfield to today's podcast. Fred, thanks so much for joining us. And before we get into the guts of this, how are you?
I'm doing great, Seb, and thank you for having me on. It's an honor to see you again and to be on. I know our great friend Jay Howard, certainly speaks highly of you and loves being a part of your organization. And health-wise, I'm doing great. I battled cancer over the last year. I had throat cancer and went through radiation and went through chemo. And I'm very fortunate and very blessed that after having my 9-month post scans about a month ago, my doctors tell me I'm cancer-free. And things look normal in my recovery process. And so I'm doing great, taking time away, took a little vacation, a little travel after I stepped down in December. And now I'm just enjoying, some free time. I'm enjoying my public board service with O'Reilly Auto Parts here in the States. We're a big company, 6,600 stores in the U.S. and working on getting 100 down in Mexico. And so I'm enjoying that board service. And also enjoying my nonprofit board service in Charlotte. And I'll remain on the 4 nonprofit boards that I've worked so diligently on the last 15, 17 years. And love doing the nonprofit work as well.
Well, Fred, you and I caught up actually about a year ago now in a rather quirky environment, one known better to me in 1984 as the scene of one of my Olympic campaigns. But we were both in the Coliseum watching NASCAR. Which was, in itself was innovative, and it was great to spend time with you and Bubba Wallace. And it was on that occasion I realized that you're quite a textured character here. You've got a lot. There's a lot in that backstory, so I'm hoping we can do a little bit of justice to that today. But look, I referenced in my introduction that your life has, to a greater extent, revolved around the game of basketball. I mean, it stretches back to your college days where you played and you coached at Campbell. Did you ever think of trying to turn pro?
I did, Seb. And, I was very fortunate at Campbell to have a great coach in the late Danny Roberts who allowed me to play a freestyle of basketball. And, I had a chance to go overseas and play in either Belgium or Sweden once I finished my undergraduate basketball career at Campbell. I chose not to do that. I was an economics major in undergrad and thought it would be quite an adjustment to move, over to Europe, to pursue a career in, not the highest level of basketball. And so I decided, to go into the business world and was fortunate right out of college to get a job as an internal auditor for what at the time was the largest textile company in the world, Burlington Industries, which was based in my hometown. Got a lot of good accounting experience there. Decided I wanted to get more education. And so I decided to go back to Campbell and work on Coach Danny Roberts' staff as a graduate assistant and to earn my MBA there. Was very fortunate to have the legendary, the late Press Maravich, Pistol Pete Maravich's dad, as the other assistant who happened to be at Campbell because his granddaughter was there. Who became a close friend and really a mentor for me, who encouraged me to not just stop and get my MBA, but also to go back and pursue a law degree. For whatever reason, Coach Maravich said to me, "You're too smart to be a coach." I'm not exactly sure what that means, because there's some really brilliant coaches out there. But I finished my MBA and decided to go into the marketing world for a couple of years with what used to be a large telephone conglomerate, Southern Bell, in the sales and marketing department. And I'm so grateful for that sales experience I got there, selling what used to be the Yellow Pages. And so now I'm dating myself.
You old romantic, Fred.
I am, right, exactly. But I got some great experience there. But then I decided to go back to law school and pursue my law degree, really thinking that I wanted to find a way to get back into sports and wanted to find a way to use my undergraduate degree in economics, my MBA, and then hopefully my law degree to get into the sports business and be able to create a career that would keep me involved in sports, but would be a lot of fun. And so that was sort of my educational career path that led me into to work with David Falk's firm, Falk Associates Management Enterprise. We called ourselves FAME. And that was quite a great experience going in as a young lawyer and representing athletes as a part of the firm that represented at the time the top 40 NBA players in the world.
Listen, we're going to get into that, because that for me is a fascinating element in your business direction, your development. But I'm not going to let you get away that quickly from basketball, because look, there's the old saying, isn't there? In our sport, you can take the man out of track and field, you never take track and field out of the man. So I'm guessing that all the things you went on to do, particularly in sports admin and working with the athletes, both in a representative and a confidant role, that it helped in all those roles for you to see the world through the eyes of a competitor. They often, I always say that, when people come and talk to me about delivering a major event, I say, if you see it through the eyes of the competitor, you're going to get 80% of the project management right straight away, because they are the number one client. You're doing it for them. You're doing it to remove all the inhibitors. So I'm guessing that although you didn't meet your dreams on a basketball court, those were still formative years for you in the things that you chose to go on to do.
Yeah, you're right, Seb. Basketball has been a part of my life since I was a youngster. Started playing competitively on a team as a 7-year-old at Windsor Community Center in Greensboro. And I was fortunate enough that basketball allowed me to get a full college scholarship to go to Campbell for free. It allowed me to pursue my graduate degree and be able to get that degree paid for as well. But basketball has really been the focus of my life. I wanted to really find a way to have basketball really integrate with my educational background into what I felt would be a fun career. And, obviously I was in school for a long time, pursuing my MBA and my law degree after undergrad. But I felt like those were the things that I needed to get in my toolbox to really be involved at a high level from a business perspective and be able to represent my clients well. And so, my goal was always to be engaged in basketball and engaged in business at a high level, be able to add value to whomever I was working with or working for. And I just, was very fortunate and blessed that Campbell University provided me the opportunity not only to play college basketball, but to get a great education. And just ironically, I met many of the people that have had such a huge impact on my life. Right in Bowie's Creek at Campbell University, Michael Jordan, Ralph Sampson, Johnny Dawkins, David Henderson, just to name a few, to start building relationships with those young men when they were, Michael in high school, at the end of his high school career, Ralph when he was a young player at Virginia, and Johnny Dawkins and David Henderson when they were young players at Duke. To build those relationships early and build friendships with them, prior to them becoming the superstar athletes they became down the road, I think, was very impactful on my life and on my career. And I'm just so grateful to Campbell that opportunity was provided through their basketball camp, which is well-renowned, as you know, Seb, and one that all the greats, came to, from John Wood to Prince Maravich to Bones McKinney, to all the young athletes that came through as college ACC players and worked as counselors, with and beside me and became close friends of mine.
Look, this is interesting for me because there's just one little exploratory moment here. I'm a great believer that we're all shaped and, forged by all sorts of things: landscape, geography, friendship, families, education. You've talked about the importance of Campbell. You've talked about the importance, clearly, of education. But family, I always find, are the continuum in this, whether it's about achievement in business or achievement on the field of play. And I'm sensing, and I think I know the answer to this, that you also had a huge amount of support from a family that sat behind much of your younger challenges.
Yeah, yes, Seb, you're right on point with that. I give my parents all the credit for anything that has happened positively in my life. I was one of those young people that was fortunate enough to have two parents at home, two well-educated parents that felt like education was a difference maker. My mom was a kindergarten and first grade school teacher for 35 years. My dad was an educator as well, and then ended up finishing his career in the postal system. But both my parents had master's degrees. My mom was a straight A honor student in college, and really pounded me as a youngster, the 4 and 5-year-old, to learn how to read and write even before I got into kindergarten and first grade. And so I had a huge jump start on a lot of my friends and a lot of the people that were my contemporaries. And so my parents, all along the way, supported me educationally and athletically. Attended all of my high school games, my junior high school games, did everything they could to get to every college game that I had down at Campbell, and even traveled to a lot of the away games. And, for me, I think it all does start at home. I think it starts with your support system at home. And my brother Charles and I really couldn't have had or dreamt of having better role models and parents than we had, because not only did they push education, they also were very involved in the community, very involved in our local church, Providence Baptist Church, very involved in the Hayes Taylor YMCA, the campaigns that ran there. My mom was very involved in her sorority and the community service that Delta Sigma Theta were doing. And so my brother Charles and I got a chance to really look up to people right in our household that gave us an opportunity to try to emulate all the great things and all the great achievements that they had done, and do it in our own way in the field and endeavor that we chose to go into. And I just happened to be that athlete that wanted to be a lawyer, that wanted to represent athletes, that wanted to stay in the sports business. And I got huge encouragement and support from my parents.
I'm going to jump to the athlete representation bit, but by way of, I guess, this bit of exploration too, because if you speak to a lot of coaches, they'll tell you that actually, if they're looking to take on an athlete in whatever sport, they want to spend time with the family. They want to understand whether there's the underpinning, whether there is the shared values, all the things that a coach needs to know are in place before they take on. Is that the type of thing you would look at before you sat down and made a judgment about taking an athlete on in that representative role?
That's an interesting point, Seb. I never really thought about it and reflected on that. But, in my role as an assistant coach at Campbell, as I recruited players to come and be a part of our program, that's exactly what I did. I went into players' homes, got to know their family. A lot of players, unfortunately grew up much differently than I did, came from single parent families. Many of them grew up in housing projects. Not quite as fortunate as I was. I think I'd call myself lower middle class growing up, and exposed to a lot of things that a lot of young people weren't. And so, what I tried to do was get to know the family. And most of these young people came from great families that just, for whatever reason, were dealt an unfortunate hand financially. But I also looked at the same type thing in the character in players as we look to represent them. When I think about Juwan Howard, who was one of the first big players that I signed out of the University of Michigan when I was with Falk Associates, he was unfortunate that his mother really didn't raise him. His grandmother did. His grandmother passed the day he committed to go to Michigan. And he was really befriended by a young man that we called Juice, who was really his family. And so as, we started to try and sign to represent Juwan, I got to build a great relationship with Juice and with Juwan.
Yeah.
His coach in Michigan was a father figure of his, Coach Fisher. And so getting to know all of them and going to a few Michigan games when he was going in his junior year was something that I really enjoyed doing and getting to know him as a person. What a great young man. Sharon Wright, who I signed in that draft as well. They went 5 and 6 in that draft. Sharon was a Clemson grad, came from a single parent family, got to know his mom, got to know him down at Clemson and really built a relationship with him. But that was one of the things I enjoyed about working with David Falk's firm. He allowed us to go out and to meet these young men and meet their families, really see if they would fit into the culture that we were trying to build as we did everything we could to help our athletes be successful. And the 5 of us in the firm that represented athletes all built relationships with our respective clients and their families and enjoyed their successes together. And even to this day, I still maintain a great relationship with Juwan, who obviously is the head coach at the University of Michigan. Just spent some time with him as he recovered from a heart procedure and came in here to coach in December in our Jumpman Invitational and, communicate back and forth with him quite a bit. And, I pride myself in the fact that I was able to build relationships with clients like he and Dwight Hollier, who's now the Associate Athletic Director at North Carolina, who played in NFL for 11 years. And as his player agent, I encouraged him to go back and get his master's degree while he was playing pro football. And I think that's allowed him the opportunity to be where he is now in a position to be an athletic director at a Power 5 school, I think, in the next, 4 or 5 years. And so I could go down the list of how important those relationships were when these were young men, 19, 20, 21, and they were looking up to me as, I'd say, an older brother who was as much a counselor, a friend, a mentor, as much as a representative. And that was the thing that I really enjoyed about our firm at Fame, is we all had our respective clients, but we had a great client list that David had amassed with Michael and, Patrick Ewing, Alonzo Mourning, Dikembe Mutombo, Muggsy Bogues. I can go down the list of all the great players we represented. And then the young lawyers in the firm or the young agents in the firm, Jeff Wexler, had his own clients that he was representing and building relationships with. Mike Higgins had his own clients he was building relationships with. Curtis Pope, who was David Falk's partner in Fame, had his list of clients. And we all worked together as a team. And I love that environment. I learned so much from David and Curtis about how to negotiate, how to manage relationships at the highest level, not just with our athletes and clients, but also with the NBA folks, with the NFL folks, with the people at the Players Associations who gave us our certification to represent athletes. It was really about building a network of relationships and a Rolodex of people that trusted, that we have mutual trust in each other that could help our clients, but also help us be able to run a successful business.
Look, I don't want to carbon date us both here, but we are pretty much the same vintage. I think I may have got a couple of years on you, Fred, but
I don't know.
No, I believe me, I have. But what interests me here is we've spanned pretty much the same evolution of sport, from slightly different angles. Me as an event, coordinator, Olympic Games and all that. You from very much the commercial side, you watch this develop. I'm fascinated because I'm guessing your role as an agent, as a representative over that period has really had to evolve. I know that when, I'm talking to athletes at World Athletics and they're talking to their athlete, their representatives, they're not just talking about, a 2-year contract with a rolling third and, your classic ROIs and eyeballs on a brand. They're talking about podcasts, they're talking about social media. So the role has dramatically altered. You must have, well, you lived that over the evolution of the most extraordinary explosion in the global penetration of sport and the fact it's now on platforms in everyone's houses 24/7.
Yeah, you're right, Seb. The whole sports business has completely evolved. And, I'd say the agent business has really transformed itself as much as any part of the sports business, with the NIL rules that are in place now and athletes being able to receive compensation while they're amateurs has certainly changed the landscape. The whole transfer portal, both in football and basketball especially, have changed the landscape of sport. And it's a different deal now, as you mentioned, with social media and, athletes having the ability to really create their own brand and have direct communication with their fans has certainly changed the way that their marketing has evolved and sports marketing has evolved. And so it's been great for me to really have been able to work, Seb, on, so many sides of the sports business, to have been an executive, really on both sides, I'd say, of an involvement business. It's been a lot of fun for me throughout my career. And, as you mentioned, the relationships that are built along the way, I think are critically important to the success that one may have in the business. And, the things that I've been able to do in this business, I'd say, really because of relationships that I've built over the years and people wanting to help me along the way to be successful and to be able to chase those dreams that one might have coming out of undergrad, coming out of grad school, coming out of law school. And so I'm just so grateful, Seb, that so many people took an interest in me. And it started with Curtis Polk and David Falk giving me an opportunity when, IMG and Advantage International and even then Elmore were, recruiting me to come be a part of their great firms. But it just made more sense for me personally, because I had a personal relationship with Michael, for me to become part of the firm that he was a part of, that David and Curtis allowed me the opportunity to come in and really learn from them the right way to start and do the sports business. And so I've just been fortunate. I've been able to grow and expand, my career over the years because of that great foundation I got at Falk Associates.
I'm sure you'd agree with me that great negotiation probably sits at the heart of great athlete representation. A few podcasts ago, I interviewed a great friend of mine. You will certainly know him, Max Siegel, the CEO of US Track and Field. Actually started life in actually music representation and then of course NASCAR. So now a really good friend. And when I put this question to him, which was, what makes a good deal? What makes a great deal? He said, you really got to completely understand the person that's sitting opposite you. In fact, you've got to know more about them than they probably know about themselves. Give me the ingredients for a great deal, a great negotiation.
Yeah, and Max has been a great friend over the years, and I have so much respect for him on the things he's done in his career. But he's right on point. One of the things that I learned very early from David and Curtis was, in order to do a great deal for your client, you have to be over prepared. And to Max's point, that really means knowing the person that you're negotiating against, knowing how to let them tell you exactly how to sell them, what their hot buttons are, and being overly prepared to be able to overcome any objection that they may have in what you're trying to negotiate for. And I was able to sit next to what I believe are the best in David Falk and Curtis Polk, and really listening through negotiations, being able to master, asking, for big numbers and being able to justify those numbers, and then being able to overcome any objections. And so the thing that I enjoyed about being a part of that firm was we had an unbelievable track record of doing deals that were above market and really setting, the mark for where NBA players should be paid in our league. And I was able to take that knowledge and experience and use it in my negotiations in NFL deals as well. I represented 8 professional football players. And it is all about trying to do a deal, in my opinion, that both parties walk away, neither feeling like they were taken advantage of, both at least feeling okay with how the deal came out, because it is a long horse race. And one of the things, that David used to always say, it's a long horse race and you're going to see that other horse again, down the road. And so trying to get, a fair deal, but obviously you want to get a deal that really is at the highest level for each client that you're negotiating for. But you also want the person that you negotiate against, even if you got all the leverage, not to feel like you completely knocked his or her head off in the negotiation because you have the leverage. Because down the road,
even if
things
you
are going to change.
Even if you have.
Because somewhere down the road, that same person is going to have the leverage on
it's
you.
Karma.
And what you want to hope for is that they remember you as being someone that was at least
reasonable.
fair. Reasonable is the right word. And that's the way I've always tried to negotiate deals on anything. And to your point, Seb, almost everything's a negotiation. As we work through a lot of issues, even in the political sector, as I had to spend time, and I'm sure we'll talk about me going to Raleigh and working on having our bathroom bill repealed so that we could get our business back going in North Carolina. There were a lot of negotiations in Raleigh with legislators and the governor, 2 governors. And unfortunately, I had Adam Silver and Kathy Barron's at the NBA, right at my side, assisting me as I work with other leading business people across the street.
That's not a bad combination.
Oh, no, that's the best combination, to have Adam and Kathy with you, and really supporting you as you negotiated, directly on behalf of our team and the city of Charlotte. And fortunately, they allowed me to do so on behalf of the NBA as well.
I'd like to focus a little on the Nike years here, because
sure.
As you know, I have a long history with Nike, and yours is a huge and interesting perspective, because you had 2 stints at Nike. Either one were each side of a stay at the Washington Wizards. Your first role at Nike was the player development at the pro basketball division, and then you did a stint. Second stint was directly with the Jordan brand. We'll talk a little bit more about the Jordan brand, because that's something that I really do want to dig into a little bit. But I'm fascinated because I joined Nike back in the day, late 70s, and it was a running business. Phil was a runner, Jeff Hollister was a runner, Nelson Ferris was a runner. That was what they did, and I'm fascinated because I remember that was the sort of genesis where they were then looking to see which other areas they were going to start, really harvesting in. How critical in those early years was that commitment they gave to basketball? Because there wasn't an obvious emotional DNA in the business at that moment for basketball, but I'm guessing that looking at it through the lens of athlete endorsements and certainly TV commercials, this was a big moment in the development of that business, and you were there.
Yeah, Seb, I'm not who I am in my career, but for Nike, and but for the opportunity that Mr. Knight and the senior team at Nike gave me. I was so fortunate to have met so many of the senior people at Nike because of my relationship with Michael. And, most of my visits to Portland with him initially were just, him going to have his business meetings at Nike and me being a close friend and being able to sit in those meetings and, hear how involved and engaged he was in all the product that was being produced by Tinker, Hatfield, and the team. And to be able to sit in meetings and get to meet Howard White and Phil Knight, really, I'd say shaped who I became when I thought about what the right culture would be that I'd love to be a part of. And when David and Curtis sold their firm, Falk Associates Management Enterprises, to SFX, I was so blessed that Howard White came to me and said, hey, we're looking to create a unique opportunity. We think your skill set really fits what we'd like to have happen. And, the first thing I said, Seb, is, do I have to move to Portland? And he said, no, not necessarily, but you need to come out and meet with all of us.
Unless you really like the rain.
Unless you really like the rain from the fall and through the winter. And so, the role that was created for me was, I thought, perfect for me, because they were going to allow me to do all of our college scouting for potential pro basketball endorsers, to put together what we call the draft report and present to Mr. Knight and the senior people at Nike on why I felt we should sign these 3 or 4 upcoming young players that were going into the NBA. Once they gave me the approval, then I was allowed to go out and negotiate those deals against the agents that, my first one was against my old boss, David Falk. Had to negotiate, believe it or not, Juwan Howard's shoe deal after just recently representing him. And so it gave me an opportunity to be on the other side of the negotiating table on behalf of Nike as we tried to grow our basketball business, not just nationally, but internationally. And then once all the deals were done, I was given the responsibility of managing our 150 or so NBA players that we had in the Eastern Conference. And the blessing was I got to stay on the East Coast. And I initially started working out of my law office in Greensboro. And then it became too much to go back and forth to Charlotte to games. I had 8 players on the Hornets team at the time, and I had about 8 players on every other Eastern Conference team, including the Chicago Bulls. And so I moved to Charlotte, got a small office there, and managed all of our NBA players in the Eastern Conference out of that office. And I learned very quickly at Nike how important relationships are. And Seb, Nike is an unbelievable family that, everybody is ultra loyal to, and we all, have and will continue to run through a wall for Mr. Knight and then John Donahoe and the entire Nike team because of the culture that I say Phil and the team built from day one, and you were there obviously before I was.
Well, we're all in good company here because actually I just talked about Max Siegel, but a year earlier than that, I managed to persuade Phil to do the podcast. I don't think he'd done that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
And there is one line that I will always remember, probably of all the podcasts. He said to me, we were talking about Nike, the genesis of the business, and he said, yeah. He said Nike's a 56-year-old overnight sensation, and he took me through all the phases that you're familiar with and I'm familiar with. And look, he must have been. I know him extremely well, but actually for you to be working alongside this guy, this was a seminal moment in your career.
Well, it was, Seb. And, I would still be at Nike today, because that's how much I love the company. But for the unique opportunity to go with Michael to work in the front office of the Wizards, and then, obviously when I left at that point, it was a very difficult situation because I love Nike and I loved my role there. And the thing that I'm most grateful for is I got an opportunity to meet with Phil when I was about to exit to go work, for the Wizards. And at that point, leaving to go to the NBA, I thought there was no chance that I'd ever go back into the shoe business and back to Nike. I had seen many people exit Nike and never get an opportunity to come back. But I'll never forget, I met with Phil as I was about to leave and go join the Wizards. And he said, hey, Fred, I think you've done a great job here. If I had to give you, 1 to 10, I'd say you were probably an 11 in your commitment to the company. And if you ever want to come back, we'll find a way to create an opportunity for you and have you back in our Nike family. And, I walked out and said, wow. I hadn't seen many people that left and had the opportunity to come back. And I never thought I'd go back. And then, after our 3-year stint with the Wizards and, Michael leaving and me leaving a number of months afterwards, for that company to really create another unique opportunity for me to join the Jordan brand, which is a very small company at the time, and be able to be on the front side of helping build a foundation of what now is about a $9 billion company, was an opportunity that I will never, ever, ever forget and always cherish. And it all stemmed back to that last meeting with Mr. Knight and also with Howard White when I was leaving at that time to go work for the Wizards.
Phil was a great mentor of yours, but it
Absolutely.
is inevitable we move on, because if Phil was a great mentor, then the one and only Michael Jordan was, well, I mean, you were his agent, you were an advisor, you were a consultant, you were a business partner, you were involved in co-ownership, and above all, you were a great confidant and a friend to him. And I know that from conversations that I've had off. That in its way, I mean, you talked about the move, but my goodness, this is a guy, that, bought into a franchise at 235, sells at over 3. I mean, Fred, that's pretty decent work. Well done.
Well, you know what I would say, Seb, is I think when Michael and I first met.
But when I said 3, I meant billion here.
3 billion. Oh, yeah, I know. I know very well 3 billion. And you meant 285 million or 235 million purchase price. But,
exactly.
I can think back to when Michael and I first met.
Back when 3 billion was a lot of money, Fred.
Well, it still is today. So, but I can think back to when Michael and I first met. And I think the thing that really drew us together, as friends initially is, just the way our parents raised us. He had, I'd say very similar parents to mine who were, hardworking, put family first, really encouraged him to make education a priority along with his athletic ability. And as our friendship grew over the years, I'd say it's all been trust, Seb, that, I think he's always known that I always had his back. I would always be there for him. I'd always keep his best interest at the forefront of everything I did, every deal I did on behalf of any company he was involved in. And really understood just how smart he was and how much he understood business in his own way. And I think that's what made us great partners. Clearly our skill sets were different. I think, going to grad school and law school prepared me to be able to be in an environment where I could help him continue to grow any business that he was a part of. He didn't have to worry whether I was in the office grinding every day when I was at Jordan Brand or when I was at Nike basketball. Obviously when I was with David Falk's firm, David was doing the majority of his work. But as things evolved over time and I became involved in Nike Pro Basketball, really helping be a part of the marketing of who Michael Jordan was, being there for those commercial shoots and really having him as engaged as he needed to be to really have those commercials, come out at the highest level. I was just there for support as a friend, but as a business colleague. And then over time, being able to build a great relationship with Curtis Polk, who has managed, Michael's relationship or business relationships with all of his companies in Estee, Portnoy, being able to build those relationships and trust amongst them as well, I think allowed me to continue working at a very senior level at Jordan Brand, and then obviously, at the Wizards with Michael. And then, eventually Bob Johnson hired me to run the business side at the then Bobcats when Michael came in as a partner of his and ownership and running the basketball side. And so it's been a phenomenal journey, but what I will say, Seb, is at the heart and core of all of that is Phil Knight. I think Michael has learned so much from Nike and the culture at Nike. I know I have. I know, whether we wanted to do it or it was subconscious, I know we tried to emulate the culture that Nike has built and Phil has built there. In everything we've done at the Bobcats, at the Hornets, really making sure that everyone that's within our organization feels the love that we have always felt at Nike and felt a part of a family relationship. And, for me, and I know we'll talk more about my days at the Bobcats and the Hornets, but one of the things I'm most proud of is in my 17 and a half years there, when I left, most of my senior leadership team had been with me the entire time. that I had been at the organization since 2006. And when I reflect back and think about our chief revenue officer, Jacob Gallagher, starting the same day with me, being onboarded with me, and I was the president, chief operating officer in 2006. He was an intern, growing with an organization to the level of chief revenue officer. And even Seth Bennett, our chief marketing officer, was my first hire in 2006, who grew to be the chief marketing officer all these years. And that's the kind of environment that Phil built at Nike, and people never left. When I think about Lynn Merritt, never left. Howard White, never left. Larry Miller left and went to run the Portland Trailblazers and then went back to run Jordan Brand again.
Yeah.
And so those kind of cultures are few and far between. And
they're enduring.
They're endearing. And that's one of the reasons I love Phil, and I love the things that he provided for me to learn how to run a business such that it made me successful in running the Hornets.
I remember in the podcast asking Phil about the Jordan brand, and he joked at the time of Michael's last game that the Jordan line was selling about $800 million a year. And ever since he's retired...
How much did you say, Seb?
They've been selling $3.5 billion. And he said, could you imagine if he'd never played the game, how much we'd have been selling?
Well, I'll tell you, Seb, when I went to Jordan Brand in 2006, we were doing about $380 million a year. And our goal was to grow to $1 billion a year, because the senior leadership team, Charlie Denson, Mark Parker, they all talked about, hey, if this is really going to be a brand, we got to get it to $1 billion a year. Otherwise, we're going to roll it back into Nike basketball, and it'd be $100 million a year business with a couple shoots a year. And, under Larry Miller's leadership with Howard White right there, our goal was to put a strategy together to get to $1 billion a year. And Seb, I was there for 3 years. We put a strategy together to really identify non-basketball athletes, the top NFL players, the top Major League Baseball players, the top boxer at the time, Roy Jones Jr., female Paralympic athlete in April Holmes. Four colleges we started with back in 2003. And when I left to become the president of Bobcats in 2006, we had grown it to a $900 million a year business, and had about 8 or 9 NFL players. We had Derek Jeter representing our brand in baseball, and Andrew Jones, Roy Jones Jr. I mentioned as a boxer, Warren Sapp and Marvin Harris, and Hall of Fame NFL players wearing our product on and off the field. And that, I think, was the impetus and the foundation of the growth that now sees Jordan Brand with 11 colleges and 40 or so NBA players, 30 or so NFL players, all players that are at an elite level. And now the business being, I think I heard it'll get to $9 billion a year this year, which is just absolutely mind-boggling to think about a sub-brand being that big.
It absolutely is. But I think if we're being honest here, it's been a recipe that's been quite hard to replicate. Look, I know that, it's been tried. Nike tried it with Roger and obviously Ronaldo and Rafa. And then there is Tiger. Actually, Tiger Woods is the interesting one for me, because that actually didn't reach the billion. And then, of course, there's been the split. That I get. I'd be interested in your view about that. But it hasn't been. I mean, the Jordan journey, in its way, is unique. I don't think anybody has ever managed to optimize quite in the way that you did with that brand, and even some really big household names. They've never actually really managed to get onto that surface.
Well said. What I'll say is Jordan Brand is the man, and no one, in my opinion, has actually replicated who Michael Jordan is. One
That's
of the
probably
things
true when you think about it. You're right.
That I've told people in working with him, because clearly, when you have, and I don't want to call him a commodity, but when you have
Yeah.
a personality like a Michael Jordan, you know, the easy thing to do is always try to put him out front and have him, you know, represent your brand, whether it's the Hornets, the Bobcats, you know, you're working with them, even Jordan Brand, put him out front and have him be the salesperson. But one of the things that I've realized about him over the years and being close to him, he's figured out how to be Michael Jordan. You know, he's figured out, you know, when to show up, when it's going to have the most impact, you know, when it's important, you know, to really, you know, speak up, because when he speaks, everyone listens. And, you know, the less people have seen him over the years, I think, the more his brand has continued to grow and grow. And one of the things that we had to really do with the Bobcats and Hornets was figure out how to market our organization with the athletes that were a part of our brand and not, you know, use Michael as a crutch. And so even at Jordan Brand, you know, one of the things he wanted to always do as we added these other, you know, premier athletes to the brand is to take a step back and let them represent the brand and carry the brand, because the logo that represents him is always going to be on the product. But when you put a Derek Jeter out to play baseball and he's in the top 3 or 4 arguably players in Major League Baseball, and he has a Jordan Brand glove on, and we've done custom Jordan Brand cleats for him, and when he's, you know, out and about, he's got Jordan Brand apparel on. Well, when people see that, it's really a halo effect for the Jordan Brand. And it's the same thing as you put the Jordan Brand on Oklahoma football and basketball, and University of Florida football and basketball, and University of North Carolina football and basketball, and then the University of Michigan football and basketball, and Michigan wins the national championship with the Jumpman on their chest and on their shoes. And all of it becomes a huge halo effect. And then the retro business, just the way Larry Miller and Sarah Mensah now, the new president, Jordan Brand, and Anthony DeCosmo, the way they've been so wise in, you know, limiting production, a retro product and really delivering them on a time schedule that the sneakerheads know exactly when every other retro shoe is coming out. And those things, our goal was to sell through all of those shoes on day one. And that, I don't think will ever be replicated, because you've got Michael and his charisma and his wisdom and his knowledge right in the center of being involved in every piece of product that goes out. He's signing off on those. Every commercial and ad that goes out, he's signing off on those. Every new athlete that's added into the brand, a new college, he's signing off on those. And he gets it. And he gets it in a way that I don't think any other athlete has been able to get behind the brand. And then again, I give tons of credit to the leadership team at Jordan Brand with Larry and Howard and, you know, all the people, Gentry Humphrey, who's right on the front end of helping create very unique product. Give them all the credit in the world of really having that brand represent the most iconic athlete and brand, I think, in the world.
You've sort of answered the question about, in a way, you've done it. You got there in advance, talking about the Bobcats, the Hornets, and that in itself, I'm really interested to sort of delve into a little bit further here, because I'm guessing that you would consider much of the commercial success in the Hornets was really hinging on turning the Spectrum Center into a multi-use, multi-entertainment venue. And look, you know, you don't need reminding, but I think it will be interesting for our listeners. I mean, that has, you know, you've hosted NBA fixtures, NBA All-Star Weekend in 2019. You've had NC2A tournaments there. You now hosted concerts, conventions, and it may actually even be the first legal place to be betting going forward. So this is interesting to me, but actually the social element in all this, which sport, you know, I'll go to my grave knowing that the most potent social worker in all our communities is sport and the assets you leverage around that.
Yes.
This center turned into an absolute center, a hub for the community of Charlotte, including, which I'm really interested because the US market is a complicated market, to have actually raised public funds for arena improvements. You must have tapped into a sentiment about the role and value of sport in those communities.
Seb, you're exactly right. And, what I'll say about Charlotte is, we're unique. We've got I call it a secret sauce. We all call it a secret sauce, in that our business community all works together to try and put our city on a global stage and just let people know what a great place we have to live, work, and play. And so I've been very fortunate to have been invited to sit on what I call the 4 sort of power nonprofit organizations in our community. One is the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council, which is a group of 30 CEOs in this community, led by Brian Moynihan and Bank of America CEO, and Duke Energy CEO, Lynn Good were our first 2 chair people. Mike Lamont was our last chairperson. But the 30 CEOs in town of, the major companies, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Duke Energy, and then fortunately me being representing a small company, the Charlotte Hornets, from the inception of this group has been, I think, very helpful up for our organization and establishing those relationships at a CEO level. Also, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, which is basically our Chamber of Commerce, but it covers 13 counties around Charlotte. Being able to sit on the executive committee of that as well and work alongside, 400 or 500 business leaders in our community. The Charlotte Sports Foundation, which is responsible for bringing large sporting events to our community, sitting on that executive committee. And then last but not least, the Foundation of the Carolinas, which is the biggest philanthropic organization that gives money out throughout the community for philanthropic companies and people in our community. Being able to sit on those nonprofit boards and being able to represent the sports and entertainment industry and work with the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority to try and bring every large event and sporting event to our town and hopefully host them in the Spectrum Center. And so for us to host the 2012 Democratic National Convention helped put us on the global stage. We were prepared to host the 2020 Republican National Convention before the pandemic came out, and we were excited about doing that as well. You mentioned the NBA All-Star Game in 2019. That put us on the global stage again. We got the NCAA Regional coming again this March in our building, and then it was just announced last Thursday that the Spectrum Center will host 4 out of the next 5 years of ACC men's and women's college basketball, 3 men's and 1 women's ACC tournament in the Spectrum Center. And so we've always looked at the Spectrum Center as a community asset. The city owns it. We've taken our responsibility very seriously of managing that building, trying to make sure we have 100+ events in that building that hit every demographic and have it be a revenue generator to keep hotels and restaurants very busy in the Uptown corridor. And we've been fortunate, and we've had a lot of support from our city. And so you mentioned the investment that the city made. It was $33 million back in 2016 that we're preparing for the All-Star Game. And we were very fortunate a year ago to have our city award us $215 million to renovate the Spectrum Center and another $60 million to build a new practice facility in exchange for us signing a 15-year lease extension to keep the Hornets right in town, an organization running and managing what has become a huge generator of revenue for our community based on not only the sporting events that we're hosting, but also, the large concerts and family shows and conventions that we're able to host at the Spectrum Center.
Look, I'm going to broaden this, if I may, to the NBA generally, because this in itself for me is a fascinating ecosystem. I was in the States last week. I was with all my good friends at the Chicago Marathon.
Okay.
And then at the end of the week, I was at the Melrose Games in the Army in New York. So I've had
great.
But that's not really the point, because, being a sports junkie, I'll always be looking up at a wall somewhere where there's a television set on. And of course, the only discussion in town last week was Super Bowl. But every night of the week, I'm effectively watching basketball. In fact, I went to watch the Bulls and the Minnesota Timberwolves
Okay.
in Chicago the other night. And look, I'm going to say something that may be a bit heretical here, particularly for NFL fans, but I think that it strikes me that the NBA is fast becoming America's sport of the future. And I say that not simply because they're closing the gap on the NFL and gaining that critical mass of global popularity. I also say it because of some of the things, and I know you absolutely are passionate about this, the move for social justice, particularly giving the athletes, the competitors, the voice to be able to shift the dial politically and socially. And look, we're all living in complicated, turbulent times. Am I right? Are my instincts right about basketball here? Because I really sensed last week. Look, I'm not living in America. I visit it quite a lot, and I think I understand a little bit about the ecosystem. I just sense that this was a sport that on three core fronts: the commercial viability, the global popularity, the social justice, and also the welfare, the discussions about welfare and load management of competitors, they just seem to be ahead of a lot of other sports. It's something we spend a lot of time worrying about in track and field because it's a tough attritional sport. And look, I just think the NBA seems to be there and probably ahead of the game.
And Seb, it's interesting. I was just at the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, and the NFL does a phenomenal job with the Super Bowl. The NFL has a very, very powerful brand, and I think Roger Goodell has done a wonderful job as commissioner. And they're even trying
this wasn't a criticism of NFL.
No, I know.
It's an extraordinary property. This was more in the context of the progress basketball's making.
No, I agree with you. And that's where I was going. I think the NFL has done a really good job in trying to grow globally as well. But I think dating back to Commissioner Stern and late Commissioner David Stern, and really having a vision, over 20 years ago to try and make the NBA a global game, and partnering with great companies like Nike, who also understood that if we take our top athletes in other countries around the world and do camps and clinics, and do them in conjunction with the NBA as well from time to time, not only are we going to grow the NBA sport, we're also going to grow the shoe business. And, I was fortunate during my days at Nike Pro Basketball to take tours all over Europe, all over Asia with our top athletes, and even actually went with Michael his first time to Asia, to Beijing and Hong Kong, Tokyo and Taipei, to grow not only the shoe business, but also representing the NBA at the time as one of the top athletes in the world. And I think, once Adam Silver became our commissioner, he just continued to further what David Stern had built as a foundation for a global brand. And I can think about, all the global games that have been created and us playing the, I say us, I mean the Bobcats. I think we were still the Bobcats when we played the LA Clippers in Hong Kong. I'm sorry, in Shenzhen and Shenzhen and not Beijing. I can't remember the other place we played in China, but to a packed crowd, and it was amazing. And so that growth is going to continue globally. We played on the global games in Paris as the Hornets against the Milwaukee Bucks in 2019, right before the pandemic. And you're right, the NBA, has taken a stance on social issues. They've allowed the players to have a voice and to speak. If you think about the stance that was taken down during the bubble in Orlando, and the messaging that were on uniforms, that were on the court after the George Floyd incident. Dating back, Seb, honestly, we had an incident in Charlotte in 2016 where a young Black man was killed by a police officer. And we as an organization and we as a community got out in front of that with our police chief.
I remember it well.
Yeah, Keith Lamont Scott. And,
Yeah.
and you know, that at that time, we realized as a community, and I mentioned the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council and the Alliance, we realized we were 50 out of 50 in economic mobility in the top 50 cities in the country. And we as a community all got together and said, you know what, we've got to be better than that. And so we started a social justice campaign in Charlotte. And you know, last year, 2 years ago, our mayor led a campaign that raised $250 million for economic mobility and social justice. And the corporate community stepped up and raised $260 million for those causes. And, you know, I think the NBA has led the way in that area. The players have been, you know, very outspoken about things that are near and dear to them and the way they grew up. And the NBA has supported it. And so I applaud Kathy Barron's and her team, you know, who lead our community outreach efforts. The NBA Foundation, I think, has done a great job in really identifying organizations that are doing, you know, great work in the economic mobility space. And the NBA and its players are committed to continue doing that going forward. And so I see, you know, both the NFL and NBA doing great things. And I think, you know, we continue to push each other for viewership. And I think Adam and the media team have done a great job, you know, to a point where you can see pro basketball literally every day and every night of the year. And All-Star Weekend, this coming weekend in Indianapolis, will be phenomenal. And I know Rick Fuson and his team are going to do a great job hosting the premier event of our NBA season. But again, Adam Silver being the leader that he has been and continues to be, and you know, I'm grateful, Sam, that he allowed me to sit on a number of subcommittees at the NBA in a leadership role with him, whether it's, you know, his team advisory council of 8 NBA team presidents, or his business and basketball committee that was made up of 14 presidents and 4 general managers, you know, to really think about how we can integrate basketball and business better to drive our business. And then obviously the Global Diversity and Inclusion Council, being able to have a seat on that council to really think about, you know, how we push our leagues to be more diverse at every level, whether it's GMs, coaches, team presidents on the business side, CEOs. The NBA is just committed to equal opportunities for everyone, which is a, you know, a great thing to be a part of. And just the leadership that Adam and his team have had at the NBA with the Team Bowl group, team marketing, and business operations is something that I think, you know, really should be applauded throughout all of sports.
Fred, you've just espoused the holy grail of sport. I mean, these are the challenges that everybody in international federations, domestic federations are aspiring to, and it's social justice. It's about the welfare of the athletes, and of course, it's remaining interesting, exciting, and salient in the lives of young people, and making the sport relatable to young people as well. And these are, look, this is the holy grail. I just think it's, from an external point of view, the NBA seem to be doing this as well, if not better than anybody out there. Let me, look, you've been characteristically generous with your time. I want to take you from the stratospheric heights of your lustrous career. My goodness, you know, just in the short space of time we've had together, it's been an extraordinary journey. But I want to take you to something that I know you feel very, very strongly about, and that's opportunity at grassroots level. I know from Jay Howard, our great mutual friend, that you are more than embedded in the Charlotte community, and that I know we've spoken about it, but your passion for underrepresented groups is probably stronger than it's ever been, maybe even stronger because of everything you've done and the opportunities that you see that sport provides. But I just wanted to I want you to tell me a little bit about the charity that you founded called Hoopty, and the Achievements Unlimited Basketball, because the school, because this really does, you know, this is the pathway, this is the pipeline.
Well, Seb, it's been my life, and it's the one thing that I hope my legacy will be built around. You know, sure, I've been very fortunate and blessed to have, you know, been at a very senior level running a professional basketball team for the last 17 and a half years, worked at Nike twice and worked with David Falk's firm. You know, but 39 years ago, Michael's rookie year in the NBA, I started Achievements Unlimited Basketball School. And a lot of people don't know the reason I started, but it was because by the time I was 25, 6 of the teammates that I played with as a 7-year-old were dead because of some drug-related activity. And so I saw that as an opportunity to use basketball, honestly, as a hook said. And as for my really close friends, I mentioned them before, Michael Jordan, Johnny Dawkins, David Henderson, and Ralph Sampson, if they would support me in starting a basketball school in my hometown, that we use basketball as a hook, but tie an educational piece in and an anti-drug message from an agency to come in and talk to underserved and underrepresented kids that we bring in on scholarship. And that's how we create Achievements Unlimited. This year, Seb, will be our 39th year of Achievements Unlimited. We hosted 25 years in my hometown of Greensboro. We've had over 15,000 kids come through our program. This year will be a Charlotte Country Day again, and we give scholarships to the YMCA, to the Police Activities League, to the Boys and Girls Club, and other nonprofits in Charlotte. And they bust the kids over, and we not only teach them fundamental basketball skills at a very high level, but we've got NBA math hoops connected to teach the kids math skills in a fun way. And then we bring a ton of professional athletes in to speak to the kids about how they got to where they are. We also bring very successful CEO, business people, and entrepreneurs in that look like a lot of the kids that are in our program. Very diverse group of kids, very diverse group of leaders. And we're blessed in Charlotte to have very diverse, successful leaders of all races and all sectors. And so, bringing female speakers in, male speakers in, have really influenced a lot of these kids' lives. And it's great to see these kids that come from underrepresented communities start to dream about big dreams. We had a 3-star general in last year, Kevin Vereen. We spoke to the kids about military and how he grew his career, become a 3-star general. These are unique opportunities these kids just have never had. And the whole concept of hoop tee, a basketball hoop and a golf tee, came about with our basketball camp. And honestly, Michael Jordan, enjoying the game of golf so much that we started a charity golf tournament to help grow funds to keep our Achievements Unlimited basketball school going, but also give some scholarships and other things out in the community to underserved kids, provide other opportunities for them. And so we'll be hosting our 19th Hoop Tee Celebrity Golf Tournament this summer at Valentine Country Club in Charlotte on July 28th and 29th. We'll have 30 high-profile NFL, NBA entertainers that'll be in a fivesome with a group of 30 foursomes that we've sold out every year, our first 18 years. We also have hosted 3 charity dinners, Hoop Tee Legend dinners in New York. We just hosted our last one January the 11th and sold it out. And had a great panel there of ESPN analysts to talk to our group. And then we've got we've done 7 of those in New York, and we've got our 3rd Hoop Tee Legends dinner coming up March 18th here in Charlotte. It's State 48, and we're excited to, again, host a full house of people in that entire restaurant. And we'll be announcing 4 more scholarships for underserved kids to go to Crofland School. I'm announcing it on your podcast, but Crofland School, which is a learning institute, for kids that have learning disabilities. But we also have awarded 4 scholarships at Charlotte Country Day in conjunction with Henry Shaw and his charity. And then, Grant Williams, who now a Charlotte Hornet player, just traded here last week. He and I partnered to sponsor 4 underserved kids, diverse kids to go to his high school, Providence Day School. One of the, arguably one of the, 2 or 2nd or 3rd best private schools in town, full scholarships, grades 9 through 12. And so we are fortunate that we've been able to give out over $1 million of scholarships to underserved, underrepresented kids that are very qualified to go and get these private school educations that hopefully will give them opportunity to go to any college and get a free scholarship anywhere in the country. I'm a product of public school, and my mom's a public school teacher, and I'm awfully proud of the public school here in Mecklenburg County under our new superintendent. But there's some kids that want a private school experience that can't afford to do it. And we're so proud at Hoop T Charity we've been able to do that. I've been able to raise those funds. So it's really an extension of who I am and all the friends and support I've gotten from the 150 or so athletes and entertainers that have been in over the years. And again, over the 15,000 kids we've been able to touch through our basketball school. And again, none of this would have happened without the support of Michael Jordan, Ralph Sampson, Johnny Dawkins, and David Henderson helping me get this all started in 1985. And I light up when I talk about it because it really has been, my life's work and what I hope I'll be remembered for, for a long, long time.
I think you'll be remembered for a lot of things, Fred. Look, you felt that Michael Jordan learned how to be Michael Jordan. It's pretty clear to me, Fred, that you sort of learned how to be Fred Whitfield.
Okay.
So just please remain Fred Whitfield and go on doing what you're doing. It's been a joy to have this conversation with you. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you, Seb. Thank you, Seb. It's been an honor. Take care. Hope to see you soon.
It's my honor completely. Fred, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Extraordinary Tales in Extraordinary Times, brought to you by CSN